Hi, and welcome to Micronaut Monday. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics. I Am Stan, a graphic biography of the legendary Stan Lee. And Jack Kirby's Star Warriors, The Adventures of Adam Star and the Solar Legion. I'll be appearing at Phantom of the Attic Comics Oakland in Pittsburgh this Saturday, September 23rd, and I'll be signing copies of all three of these books. I hope to see you there. So with the end of the first 12 issues of Micronauts, there comes this king-size annual, the Micronauts annual, first collector's item issue. And when I was looking to check out the Micronauts comic, having heard a lot of good things about it, this is where I started. I saw this in the back issue bins, had the nice number 1 on it. I'm like, okay, let me check out let me see what the Micronauts are all about. Had this great Steve Ditko cover. It was all sealed up, so it wasn't until I brought it home that I found out that, hey, this is a Steve Ditko comic. This is Ditko through and through. Bill Mantlow's story, Steve Ditko art, and so it's Ditko inking Ditko as well. And it's sort of an anthology story, like the sort of comics Ditko was doing through the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, weird anthologies where you'd have like a couple different stories and an omniscient narrator. And so in this case, it's 3 different tales of the Micronauts with Time Traveler as the narrator, as the sort of crypt keeper. We get a little bit of a view of, what might have been with the Micronauts, almost like a 1960s comic, sort of, classic 1960s Marvel comic. You have, one of the founding fathers, Steve Ditko, drawing it. Also sort of, what a Micronauts comic is when you take Michael Golden out of the equation, because we have Bill Mantlo, the series writer, we have Al Milgrom, the editor, and so we've changed sort of artist, co-writer with Steve Ditko. So it's got a different flow. I like this comic quite a bit. So first we have an adventure of Arcturus Ran and Biotron. This whole comic, all the stories in this are it's sort of like a prequel to issue 1 of the Micronauts. We're seeing what was happening with the various characters just before the events of issue 1. And so Arcturus Ran and Biotron are flying through the microverse in this, kind of Steve Ditko, otherworldly, extra-dimensional space. And Arcturus Ran is in suspended animation, so we get a little more like a close-up view of some of the things that were just spoken about or hinted at in various issues of Micronauts. Arcturus Ran is in suspended animation throughout this journey. He wakes up intermittently for various adventures. Mostly Biotron does the little tasks for him, but he's able to telekinetically communicate with Biotron. Since this is, co-plotted and drawn by Steve Ditko, we're seeing sort of a Steve Ditko version of that, where Arcturus Ran has this sort of ghostly protoplasmic version of himself that comes out of his body like Doctor Strange and is able to sort of carry on these conversations with Biotron. And their ship is kind of tossed around a little bit, and they find the source of the trouble is this planet, which is not too different from Homeworld. It's kind of a a pre-industrial Homeworld before Homeworld got covered with construction and circuitry. And they meet Galactic Defender. I am Galactic Defender, sworn guardian of Paradise 3. My first strike was but a warning. Strangers are not welcome on this world. Go. So we get almost kind of like a Star Trek adventure. Arcturus Ran probably had hundreds of similar adventures in his 1,000-year journey. He lands on this planet. It's being defended by a strange character, Galactic Defender, very, very closely modeled after the Galactic Defender toy. That's one of the things you'll find in this annual. They must have sent Steve Ditko a box of toys, Micronaut toys also, because there are a lot of the actual toys show up in this issue. Galactic Defender is one of them. So they have a little battle with Galactic Defender, who has a lightsaber, but in the shootout, his helmet gets cracked. He freaks out, goes back to this, sort of temple. Again, I love these little, Steve Ditko flourishes. It's really nice. I mean, this is one of the better Ditko comics of the era, and it makes sense that Bill Mantlo would want to work with him again later on with Rom. And also, Ditko does at least one more Micronauts annual after this one. Looks really great. And I like Ditko working in a sort of 70s post-Star Wars science fiction milieu. So you have a little bit of, Ditko's sort of classic sci-fi that he's been doing his whole career, merged with some of the kind of sci-fi that I grew up with. It's a nice marriage here. And so they get to this strange temple. They find Galactic Defender is collapsed and all these canisters of old men and withering corpses. It turns out that this suit that he was wearing was keeping him from aging, keeping him away from, sort of particles and things, and that this society has been they've sort of cut themselves off from the rest of the microverse, fearing, infection, and that they had sort of like a, totalitarian government that takes over that weeds out, whoever they think doesn't belong. And we get this guy watching as he sort of ages and freaking out about it. So they all, sort of preserve themselves. This guy looking a lot like a middle-aged Peter Parker. So he was the one Galactic Defender left to, protect them from outsiders while the rest of them slept in stasis. Sci-fi explanation of how he failed in his task and let the whole world kind of go to seed, and now it's all collapsing around him and as he turns to dust. Paradise 3 was a world that feared change, Biotron, and changed for the worse because of it. We've seen all there is to see. Let's return to the Endeavor. Tomorrow we land on Homeworld. It'll be good to return to a planet eternally at peace with the rest of the microverse. A little bit of irony there, knowing what we know about, how his world has changed during his 1,000-year journey. We get another, visit from the narrator, time traveler, introducing the next story about Princess Mary, Prince Argon, the Shadow Priests, Baron Karza, and Shaitan of Spartak. So Mary is, running this sort of, danger room course for equestrians, riding Force Commander's horse Oberon, who he later is merged with. They're watching the practice, the training, the exercise, whatever you want to call it. And Baron Karza shows up in his equestrian form. In the series, we don't see him in his equestrian form until the final issue, and it's played as sort of this big reveal that like nobody else knew that this was like a form that Baron Karza could take. So, a little bit of a, continuity glitch here, but I don't mind. Karza's approach kind of spoils the occasion, freaks out the horse Oberon. Oberon knows better than anybody. Mary is thrown from her horse. Biotron catches her. Ditko is a master, and this is like a very engaging, very fun, action-packed story with some really nice emotional beats to it. Also, a nice sense of dread and foreboding. If Ditko became the regular artist on Micronauts, it's a pretty big change from Michael Golden, but I think it could have really worked. Karza is kind of gloating and talking about how stubborn, the king, your father, the king, is, and you, the royal family, for rejecting my offers of eternal life in my body banks, and never blackguard. You'll never corrupt us with your promises of immortality. And so he moves on and gets hit in the back of the head with, wait for it, a piece of horse shit that Microtron was cleaning up. 1,000 pardons, Baron. I was merely cleaning the anti-grav track and let the chips fall where they may, the horse chips. They leave and watch the approach of new arrivals in a spaceship gathered from various worlds, prisoners for Baron Karza's great games. And we see a nice assortment of Ditko-designed aliens, as well as Acroyer and Bug. And, Bug sends the secret signal, which is the thumbs up, to Princess Mary, because she's supposed to be, sort of their contact with the underground, with the rebellion. And then we get this really nice cast photo, this nice drawing of all the various characters we've met, throughout this journey of the Micronauts, including Some characters whose issue is out currently at the same time as this comic, issue 13 of the Micronauts. Bug's father, Wartstaff, and Bug's lady, Jasmine. And then also, appearing soon, the Fantastic Four and Psycho Man. Psycho Man, who is an inhabitant of the microverse, going back to the 1960s when Reed Richards and the Fantastic Four were the first Micronauts, and they refer to themselves as such in one of those comics, I think issue 68. Reed Richards says, "We're the first Micronauts." So this was decades before the Micronauts comic or toy line would exist. Jack Kirby and Stan Lee coined the term Micronauts and Microverse. So we have a little bit of games. The royal family, they don't want to watch it. They want nothing to do with this. And one of the shadow priests drops some hints that they are not affiliated with Baron Karza, as much as Baron Karza may think that to be the case. So it's a prequel. It's designed to be read after you've read the first 12. I happened to read it before the first 12, and so I don't feel there were any spoilers because I wasn't paying such close attention to be like, oh, there's the Shadow Priests, and they're possibly their alliances to the Enigma Force and not Baron Karza. But it did help me familiarize myself with this world. So when I read issue 1, I was off and running. This time the king really stands up to Karza, and Karza and Prince Shaitan talk about how they're going to pull off a coup against the king, and now the king is ready to strike. He pulls out his sword and is demolished instantly by Baron Karza. Really good stuff. This comic, this issue kind of cements those first 12 Micronauts issues as this kind of like legendary thing, this like legendary piece of storytelling, this sort of legend that we can kind of make prequels of and visit from different angles. It would be really hard to make this kind of comic for just any comic book. The Micronauts, what Michael Golden and Bill Mantlo created in those first 12 issues, it really warrants a deeper examination and delving into the story before the story. So now the fight's on. The prince and princess are fighting back. I really like this. This is kind of like something you'd see in like a Wild West comic where she's running and kind of throwing the gun backwards, firing as she's being chased. They get to a wall. Prince Argon gives Mary a boost, and then he throws up his rifle, and then she uses the rifle to help lift him up as he's climbing up there. Sort of devil-may-care, swashbuckling kind of body language. Again, it's Steve Ditko in sort of a Star Wars mode. And now they jump on their horses that Microtron's been waiting there for them, and they get away, secretly cheered on by the Shadow Priests. Karza comes in and in sort of Marvel Comics villain fashion claims that this is all part of his plan. He meant to do that. He meant for them to escape, and that they're going to lead him to the rebellion. And now we have our third and final story, again introduced by the narrator, Time Traveler. And yeah, we get some more of the newer Micronauts toys. We get this Hornetroid in there that Bug and Acroyer are fighting. All the different gladiators in the arena. This guy kind of, is trying to pick a fight with Acroyer and Bug kind of teases them, makes fun of them. And now the fight's on. Acroyer lifts this giant guy in the air, throws him at the other guy, and is victorious. Everybody cheers him on. We see a lot more of like Shadow Priests sort of secretly planting the seeds of rebellion. They've snuck in Acroyer's sword and Bug's rocket lance to fight with when they're in the arena. Baron Karza, sort of Roman emperor, gets to preside over the games. Now, some cool alien designs from Ditko, and then we get to see Ditko's rendition of Repto, one of the last Micronaut toys, the guy with the pizza cutter arm. So it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool to see. I mean, I'm a fan. I'm a big fan of the comic, and I'm a fan of the toys too. So it's really nice when you get to see more of the toys show up because that varies throughout the series, the amount of like the actual toys that show up. So it's kind of cool to see, Repto show up, and Bug has to fight him. Terrafant, another toy, another one of the later toys. And a Croyer makes mincemeat of him, throws him at all the other gladiators they had to fight. And so, the battle's over. Bug's like, I'm sure glad I'm on your team. According to tradition, these two, as the victors, should earn their freedom, but which is what the king usually does. But now the king's dead, so it's up to Karza to decide, whether they get their freedom or not. And of course, he gives them the big thumbs down and sends in Hornetroid, another toy from the line, and they get to fight him. Really fun sequence. And of course, a Croyer cannot be stopped. Destroys the Hornetroid with a slash of his sword. Now the crowd is screaming to free them, free them. They've become the crowd favorites. Baron Karza is still insistent that they will stay as prisoners. And he says, tomorrow the crowd will forget anyway, it's fine. And now Mary finally gives the thumbs up signal back to Bug, letting him know that she is, on board. She is their contact. But that too is a story already chronicled elsewhere, a tale of the first meeting of the Micronauts on the day Commander Arcturus Ran and his microship Endeavor returned to Homeworld as an unwitting emissary of the Enigma Force after his 1,000-year sojourn in space. The end. So yeah, we get this, his ship approaching Homeworld. And if you want to start the mythic cycle all over again, you can, begin reading Micronauts with issue 1 right after you finish this. It's a perfect mythic cycle. We get an ad for the ROM Space Knight toy and the first issue of the ROM Space Knight comic, also written by Bill Mantlo, with Sal Buscema as his artist and co-writer. As ROM enters the later period of its run, Steve Ditko takes over as artist and co-writer, and it's very much of a piece of what he's doing here. So if you like what the Ditko Mantlo combination you've seen here, you'll really like it in the ROM comics too. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics, now in softcover. And I am Stan, a graphic biography of the legendary Stan Lee in hardcover and softcover, and Jack Kirby's Star Warriors, The Adventures of Adam Star and the Solar Legion. I'll be appearing this Saturday, September 23rd, at Phantom of the Attic Comics Oakland in Pittsburgh, and I'll be signing all 3 of these comics there. I hope to see you then. And in any event, I'll see you next time for Micronaut Monday.